Imagine you are standing on the shore 80 million years ago in what is now Kansas. The air is thick, humid, smelling of salt and decaying mangrove. On land, ankylosaurs are munching ferns, and maybe, just maybe, a Tyrannosaurus rex patrols the beach line. You feel safe on the sand, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Because that land dinosaur, that apex predator that haunts the dreams of every dino normie, is about to be dwarfed by something lurking just beneath the surface. Something whose skull alone is the size of a modern Honda Civic. If falling into the ocean today gives you anxiety about sharks, falling into the Cretaceous ocean meant instant, involuntary donation to the marine food chain. We are talking about true apex predators. Creatures that viewed a T-Rex as a slightly awkward, slow-moving short king compared to their hydrodynamic absolute unit status. Today on The Lost World, we are diving deep into the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. Not to look at the fuzzy feathers or the tiny forelimbs of terrestrial dinosaurs, but to confront the real nightmare fuel, the mega-reptiles whose reign over the seas was so absolute, it would make the megalodon look like a glorified goldish. Get ready to have your understanding of prehistoric power completely upended. The Jurassic marine juggernauts. When most people think sea monster, they probably picture the shark from Jaws or, if they are slightly more informed, maybe the late great Otodus megalodon. Now, before the comments section explodes, let's get this out of the way right now. Megalodon was magnificent. It was huge. It had a bite force that could crush a submarine. But Megalodon swam in the Miocene and Pliocene epochs, long after the great dinosaur extinction. It never met a T-Rex. It certainly never met the monsters we're about to discuss. To find the true marine giants that existed contemporaneously with the terrestrial dinosaurs, we must rewind back to the middle to late Jurassic period, roughly 170 to 150 million years ago. This was the era of the pliosaurs. Massive, short-necked, four-flippered marine reptiles that looked like someone tried to build a T-Rex body plan using only marine components, resulting in a terrifying, streamlined torpedo of muscle and teeth. For years, the pliosaur poster child was Leopleurodon ferox, a name that became famous through pop culture, specifically a certain mid-90s documentary that grossly overestimated its size, suggesting it could reach 25 meters, or 82 feet. Researchers loved the idea. It was a magnificent monster, but the reality, based on fragmented fossil evidence, specifically the skull of the specimen known as the Kimmeridge clay pliosaur, suggested sizes closer to 15 meters, maybe 17 meters on the generous end. Still colossal, still terrifying, but not quite the 82-foot behemoth of legend. But paleontologists are relentless, and the ocean is vast. Just when we settled on pliosaurs being only refrigerator-sized predators, a new discovery reset the clock and brought the true definition of an absolute unit back into focus. We have to travel way up north, to the Arctic archipelago of Svalbard, Norway. This place is cold, harsh, and utterly unforgiving today, but 150 million years ago during the Jurassic, it was warm, shallow, and teeming with life. In 2006, a team from the University of Oslo's Natural History Museum, battling the freezing northern winds, unearthed fragments that hinted at something colossal. Over the next several years, meticulous excavation revealed parts of a skull, vertebrae, and the massive paddle bones of a creature that redefined the scale of oceanic predation. They nicknamed the specimen the monster, and scientifically it was later classified as a giant pliosaurus. While precise species classification is still debated, it is often referenced under the umbrella of Pliosaurus funke, or similar massive relatives. How massive are we talking? The recovered skull fragments suggested a total skull length exceeding 3 meters, 10 feet. Think about that. The head alone is longer than most modern compact cars. The estimate for the total body length of this Svalbard predator was initially pushed to 15 meters, but the sheer robusticity of the bone structure suggested a density and weight that were truly staggering. Based on volumetric reconstruction, Pliosaurus funke wasn't just long. It was built like a moving mountain of muscle. Current scientific consensus places its weight well over 45 metric tons. That's roughly equivalent to 7 large African bush elephants stacked on top of each other, or perhaps 30 Honda Civics. This animal didn't just bite its prey, it obliterated it. Its teeth were conical, serrated, and massive, perfect for punching straight through the shell of an armored ammonite, or the heavy plating of a marine turtle. A 2017 analysis by a team in Bristol showed that the unique skull structure and muscle attachments meant this pliosaur had a bite force potentially surpassing the mighty T-Rex, specifically designed to withstand the immense hydrodynamic drag of pursuing and snapping down on large, fast-moving prey in the water column. Imagine being in the shallow Tethys Sea, watching a massive ichthyosaur, an already huge dolphin-like marine reptile, swimming along, perhaps 8 meters long. Then, out of the dark blue depths, comes a 45-ton torpedo moving at flank speed. That ichthyosaur would be instantly reduced to roadkill. This Jurassic giant truly was the absolute unit of its time, ensuring that even the largest, fastest marine creatures were constantly scanning the abyssal dark for that approaching shadow. Transitioning to the Cretaceous, the age of lizards. The pliosaurs were the undisputed champions of the Jurassic oceans, but ecosystems change, and evolution is brutal. Around 100 million years ago, as the Mesozoic headed into the late Cretaceous, global sea levels rose dramatically. Warm, shallow seas flooded continents, creating expansive inland waterways like the famous Western Interior Seaway, WIS, that split North America in two, stretching from the Gulf of Mexico up to the Arctic. This new, vast, and highly productive environment was ripe for a new type of predator, the Mosasaurs. Now, if pliosaurs were the brutal reptilian torpedoes, Mosasaurs were the terrifying, oversized nope ropes of the sea. They were gigantic marine lizards, closely related to modern monitor lizards and snakes. Yes, your favorite giant prehistoric killer is essentially a Komodo dragon that decided to swap the scrublands for the high seas and grew to the size of a school bus. This evolutionary trajectory is one of the most fascinating and, frankly, bizarre in paleontology. Mosasaurs evolved incredibly quickly from small semi-aquatic lizards called Ageilosaurs. Think about the speed of this change. They went from splashing around in coastal lagoons to dominating every niche of the global ocean in only about 20 million years. That is a blink of an eye in geological terms. The climate of the late Cretaceous was global hothouse conditions. No polar ice caps, subtropical temperatures even near the poles, and the WIS was a warm, nutrient-rich paradise, generating a massive food supply of fish, sharks, smaller, primitive ones, turtles, and other marine reptiles. The peak predator of this age was Mosasaurus hoffmanni, named after the area near Maastricht in the Netherlands where the initial, magnificent specimen was found back in the late 18th century, a discovery that literally changed how people viewed Earth's history. Mosasaurus hoffmanni was a marvel of terrifying hydrodynamics. Estimates place the largest individuals consistently over 17 meters, 55 feet. While they may not have had the sheer compact bulk of the 45-ton pliosaur, their serpentine length and enormous skulls made them visually overwhelming. Their bodies were long and flexible, terminating in a crescent-shaped fluke tail, a recent discovery that refuted older depictions of them having eel-like tails and confirmed they were fast, efficient cruisers. But the teeth were the main event. Unlike the crushing teeth of the pliosaur, Mosasaurs had rows of sharp, backward curving teeth, designed not just to puncture, but to hold, rip, and tear. They were built to dismantle things that fought back. The evidence for their apex status is not just the size of their skulls. It is written on the bones of their prey. The evidence, bite marks, and isotopic secrets. How do we know these creatures were the uncontested kings of the Cretaceous ocean, superior even to giant terrestrial predators? The fossils tell the story. Consider the remains found in the chalk beds of the Kansas WIS. Paleontologists have uncovered numerous fossilized marine turtles, specifically giant species like Archelon, which itself was an absolute unit, reaching sizes up to 4 meters long and weighing over 2 metric tons. Archelon had a thick, leathery shell for protection. Yet fossils of these behemoth turtles frequently show severe damage. Skulls crushed, ribs snapped, and large, semicircular gouges taken out of the carapace. These are not scavenging marks. These are consistent fatal attacks. A 2021 study by researchers at Yale correlated the spacing and shape of these fatal punctures specifically to the jaw structure of the largest mosasaurs, particularly Tylosaurus. Tylosaurus, a close cousin of Mosasaurus hoffmanni, was perhaps even more aggressive. It was known for its distinct long snout reinforced at the tip, which researchers believe was used not just for biting but for ramming, stunning prey before the fatal attack. Imagine being headbutted by a 5-ton lizard going 30 miles per hour, then being swallowed whole or ripped in half. Nightmare fuel indeed. But the most compelling evidence that puts the T-Rex in its place as a comparatively smaller predator comes from analyzing the diet of the mosasaurs themselves. A revolutionary method involves analyzing stable isotopes, specifically carbon and nitrogen isotopes, preserved in the fossilized bone or teeth enamel. Nitrogen isotopes, N15, accumulate up the food chain. The higher the N15 ratio in an animal's bones, the higher its trophic level, meaning how far up the food chain it sits. A 2015 study focusing on several mosasaur genera found that the largest mosasaurs, Mosasaurus, Tylosaurus, and the bizarre globe-toothed globidans, consistently showed N15 levels equivalent to or higher than modern orcas, placing them at the absolute pinnacle of their ecosystem. They were eating literally everything beneath them, and this includes, chillingly, each other. Fossil records show evidence of intraspecies combat and predation among mosasaurs. A jawbone of a smaller Clydastes mosasaur was found with massive, healed bite marks, perfectly matching the jawline of a larger Tylosaurus. We aren't just talking about cannibalism during desperation. We are talking about ecosystem domination, where the only creature strong enough to challenge the largest mosasaur was another one of its kind. If a T-Rex wanted to fight, it would need to contend with gravity and its own 2 legs. These marine giants had 360-degree mobility and an entire ocean of mass to accelerate into their attacks. T-Rex, for all its glory, had to contend with the terrain. These creatures were the terrain. Mid-roll, segment, the reality of ancient life. This deep dive into ancient oceanic terror makes you appreciate the comparatively docile waters of today, and it makes you realize how utterly unforgiving ancient life was. When you are studying something as complex as the transition from pliosaurs to mosasaurs, you need reliable resources, and that's why I want to take a moment to talk about our fantastic fictional sponsor today, ChronoLens, the definitive historical documentation service. Are you tired of dino normies confusing the Jurassic with the Cretaceous? Do you need high-resolution, peer-reviewed diagrams of the mosasaur palatine bone structure? ChronoLens provides access to archived satellite imagery of the western interior seaway. Don't ask how they got it, they just did. And complete 3D models of Liopleurodon's conical teeth. Stop wasting time with fragmented Wikipedia pages and get the whole picture. ChronoLens, because history deserves depth. Now back to our absolute units of the deep. The comparison, T-Rex versus marine reptile. Let's finally put the T-Rex comparison into concrete terms. The largest T-Rex specimen, Sue, measures around 12.3 meters long and weighed perhaps 8.5 to 9 metric tons. This is the undisputed king of the late Cretaceous land. He is fierce, powerful, and terrifying. Now consider our marine competitors. 1. The Jurassic pliosaur, Pliosaurus funky. Length 15 plus meters, weight 45 metric tons, bite force potentially higher than T-Rex. 2. The Cretaceous mosasaur, Mosasaurus hoffmanni. Length 17 plus meters, weight 15 to 20 metric tons, sleeker but still heavier than T-Rex. If you put these creatures side by side, the T-Rex suddenly looks like a beefy land mammal struggling against 2 hydrodynamic superweapons. The scale difference is fundamentally rooted in physics. Water supports massive weight far better than land. A 45-ton terrestrial animal would struggle constantly simply to stand and move without crushing its own skeleton. The pliosaur, fully supported by the dense water, could evolve into a compact, devastating muscle mass without worrying about breaking its femur. The bizarre case of Tylosaurus and the western interior seaway. Let's dive further into the hunting grounds of Tylosaurus, the king of the WIS. The seaway was not just a large body of water. It was an active geological feature that shifted and changed over millions of years. As the Laramide orogeny, mountain building, pushed up the Rockies to the west, sediments poured into the seaway, keeping the waters relatively turbid near the shores, but allowing for deep, open ocean conditions in the center. Tylosaurus exploited the full range of this environment. Studies of stomach contents, rare as they are, provide bizarre snapshots of their diet. One famous specimen, affectionately nicknamed Bucky, contained the remains of a small unidentified mosasaur, a huge marine turtle, several fish, and the skeletal remains of a seabird. Yes, seabirds. This shows Tylosaurus was an opportunistic hunter with a truly catholic palate. It could breach the surface to grab a careless flyer, or dive deep to ambush a turtle. Unlike crocodilians that rely on surprise bursts, mosasaurs could sustain high speeds. Analysis of their vertebral structure suggests that their tails allowed for powerful propulsion over long distances, crucial for patrolling an ocean that was thousands of miles long. There are even theories, now largely discarded but historically important, that suggested mosasaurs could come ashore to ambush prey, much like modern saltwater crocodiles. These theories arose from finding mosasaur remains in very shallow coastal deposits. However, modern biomechanical analysis, particularly concerning the structure of their flippers and their inability to support their immense weight out of the water without crushing their internal organs, confirms that once they left the water, they were essentially roadkill. They were fully pelagic, meaning they lived their entire lives in the open ocean. Their power was tethered to the water. This is a key evolutionary trade-off. Unparalleled power in the water, zero power on land. T-Rex had to contend with its environment. Mosasaurs were their environment. The mosasaur extinction and the end of an era. The reign of these marine monsters came to a definitive, apocalyptic end 66 million years ago, alongside their terrestrial counterparts, the non-avian dinosaurs. The KPG extinction event, triggered by the massive Chicxulub asteroid impact in the Yucatan Peninsula, hit the marine ecosystems arguably harder and faster than the land. The initial impact created mega tsunamis, but the true devastation came from the subsequent global cooling, the sulfur aerosols blocking the sun, and the collapse of the phytoplankton base of the food chain. When the tiny floating organisms that feed everything from shrimp to large fish die off, the entire pyramid collapses. The mosasaurs, being highly specialized apex predators at the top of a deep food web, required massive amounts of high trophic level food. They couldn't survive on scavenging small amounts of detritus. The pliosaurs had already been wiped out earlier, but the mosasaurs were at the peak of their evolutionary prowess when the lights went out. The large mosasaurs, the absolute units of the Cretaceous, suffered the most acute RIP. Their disappearance left a colossal void in the oceans, a vacuum that would eventually be filled by mammals, cetaceans or whales, and, much later, by gigantic sharks like Megalodon. The legacy of the mosasaurs and the pliosaurs is a harsh, bizarre lesson in biological dominance. They weren't just big. They were perfectly engineered killing machines that achieved a scale and power output that terrestrial life struggles to match. They remind us that for all the ferocious majesty of the T-Rex, the true, largest, and most terrifying predators the Mesozoic world ever produced were the ones swimming silently in the infinite dark, ruling an environment far more vast and unforgiving than any scrubland or jungle. Their shadows still haunt the deep trenches today, a testament to an era when the oceans held the ultimate nightmare fuel. Thanks for watching, and until next time on The Lost World.